Hey, y'all. Good morning. Good morning. This is your girl, Tonetta Clay, here at the podcast, the social worker coach. So good morning, good day, good evening, whatever time you listen to this. Good day to you. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and continue on. If y'all on YouTube, y'all can see this, but on the podcast, you can't see. So that's why I urge you on the podcast, Social Worker Coach Podcast. Make sure that you go over on YouTube and, of course, subscribe to my channel as well. It is Tonetta Clay, and you'll see that link down in the description as well. Like I said, definitely get on over there and do so. It's like I got something on my lip. What is this? I can't see. Oh, well. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's me, y'all. I don't know. Maybe it's a piece of dry skin. I doubt it. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Whatever it is, let's just keep on going. Okay, let me see. Okay, y'all. Like I said, this is lesson number 8. This is self-control in the book, The Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. And like I said, let's go ahead and get into this. We're almost halfway through this book, actually. So like I said, let's go ahead and get into this. Let me make sure I'm okay, because it's messing up on me. I think hopefully won't add it back up. Hopefully it's back up. I'm hoping. Okay, y'all. And again, make sure that y'all, like I said, subscribe to the podcast here, download the podcast. And of course, the same thing on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe and, of course, click that notification bell for all the podcast episodes and other videos that I upload there on YouTube. And like I said, all that information, no matter what platform you're looking at this on, will be in the description so that you can come and subscribe. And then, of course, like I said, just share this out with your friends, family, and those who may want to, that you think that may want to hear this. So let me go ahead and get into it, y'all. Lesson 8, self-control. In the preceding lesson, you learn of the value of enthusiasm. You also learn how to generate enthusiasm and how to transmit its influence to others through the principle of suggestion. You come now to the study of self-control, through which you may direct your enthusiasm to constructive ends. Without self-control, enthusiasm resembles the unharnessed lighting of an electrical storm. It may strike anywhere. It may destroy life and property. Enthusiasm is the vital quality that arouses you to action, while self-control is the balance wheel that directs your action so that it will build up and not tear down. To be a person who is well balanced, you must be a person in whom enthusiasm and self-control are equalized. A survey which I just completed of 160,000 adult inmates of the penitentiaries of the United States discloses the startling fact that 92% of these unfortunate men and women are in prison because they lack the necessary self-control to direct their energies constructively. Read the foregoing paragraph again. It is authentic, and yet it is startling. It is a fact that the majority of a man's grief come about through lack of self-control. The Holy Scriptures are full of admonition in support of self-control. They even urge us to love our enemies and to forgive those who injure us. The law of non-resistance runs like a golden cord throughout the Bible. Study the records of those whom the world calls great, and observe that every one of them possessed this quality of self-control. For example, study the characteristics of our own immortal Lincoln. In the midst of his most trying hours, he exercised patience, poise, and self-control. These were some of the qualities which made him the great man that he was. He found his loyalty in some of the members of his cabinet, but for the reason that this disloyalty was toward him personally, and because those in whom he found it had qualities which made them valuable to his country, Lincoln exercised self-control and disregarded the objectionable qualities. How many men, I'm trying to see something, y'all, sorry. How many men do you know who have self-control to equal this? In language more forceful than it was polished, Billy Sunday exclaimed from the pulpit, "There is something as rotten as hell about the man who is always trying to show some other fellow up. I wonder if the devil don't tell you, don't yell, 'Amen, brother,' when Billy made that statement." However, self-control becomes an important factor in this reading course on the law of success, not so much because of the lack of it works hardships on those who become its victims, as for the reason that those who do not exercise it suffer the loss of a great power, which they need in their struggle for achievement of their definite chief aim. If you neglect to exercise self-control, you are not only likely to injure others, but you are sure to injure yourself. During the early part of my public career, I discovered that havoc lack of self-control was playing in my life, and this discovery came about through a very commonplace incident. I believe it not out of the place here to digress by making the statement that most of the great truths of life are wrapped up in the ordinary, commonplace events of everyday life. This discovery taught me one of the most important lessons I have ever learned. It came about in this way. One day in the building in which I had my office, the janitor and I had a misunderstanding. This led to a most violent form of mutual dislike between us. As a means of showing his contempt for me, the janitor would switch off the electrical lights of the building when he knew that I was there alone at work in my study. This happened on several occasions until I finally decided to strike back. My opportunity came one Sunday when I came to my study to prepare an address that I had to deliver the following night. I had hardly seated myself at my desk when the lights went off. I jumped to my feet and ran toward the basement of the building where I knew I would find the janitor. When I arrived, I found him busily engaging, shoveling coal into the furnace, and whistling as though nothing unusual had happened. Without ceremony, I pinched him in the arm, and for 5 minutes, I hurled objectives at him, which were hotter than the fire that he was feeding. Finally, I ran out of words and had to slow down. Then he straightened himself up, looked back over his shoulder in a calm, smooth tone of voice that was full of poise and self-control, and with a smile on his face that reached from ear to ear, he said, "Why, you all's just a little bit excited this morning, ain't you?" That remark cut as though it had been a stiletto. Imagine my feelings as I stood there before an illiterate man whom could neither read nor write, but who, despite this handicap, had defeated me in a duel that had been fought on grounds and with the weapon of my own choice. My conscience pointed an accusing finger at me. I knew that not only had I but been defeated, what was worse, I knew that I was the aggressor and that I was wrong, which only served to intensify my humiliation. Not only did my conscience point an accusing finger at me, but it placed some very embarrassing thoughts in my mind. It mocked me and tantalized me. There I stood, a boasted student of advanced psychology, an exponent of the Golden Rule philosophy, having at least a fair acquaintance with the works of Shakespeare, Socrates, Plato, Emerson, and the Bible. While facing me stood a man who knew nothing of literature or of philosophy, but who had, despite this lack of knowledge, whipped me in a battle of words. I turned and went back to my office as rapidly as I could. There was nothing else for me to do. As I began to think the matter over, I saw my mistake, but true to nature, I was reluctant to do that which I knew must be done to right the wrong. I knew that I would have to apologize to that man before I could place myself at peace in my own heart, much less with him. Finally, I made up my mind to go back down to the basement and suffer this humility, which I knew I had to undergo. The decision was not easily reached, nor did I reach it quickly. I started down, but I walked more slowly than I had when I went down the first trip. I was trying to think how I would make the second approach so as to suffer the least humiliation possible. Good Lord. When I got to the basement, I called to the janitor to come over to the door. In a calm, kind tone of voice, he asked, "What do you wish this time?" I informed him that I came back to apologize for the wrong I had done, if he would permit me to do so. Again, that smile spread all over his face as he said, "For the love of the Lord, you don't have to apologize. Nobody heard you except these four walls and me. I ain't gonna tell it, and I know you ain't gonna tell it, so just forget it." And that remark hurt more than the first one, for he had not only expressed a willingness to forgive me, but he had actually indicated his willingness to help me cover the incident up, so it will not become known and do me an injury. But I walked over to him and took him by the hand. I shook with more than my hand. I shook with my heart. And as I walked back to my office, I felt good for having summoned the courage with which to right the wrong I had done. This is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning. Following this incident, I made a resolution that I would never again place myself in a position in which another man, whether he be literate janitor or a man of letters, could humiliate me because I had lost my self-control. I have a problem with that word, humiliate. Goodness. Following that resolution, a remarkable change began to take place in me. My pen began to take on great power. My spoken words began to carry greater weight. I began to make more friends and fewer enemies among men of my acquaintance. The incident marked one of my most important turning points of my life. It taught me that no man can control others unless he first controls himself. It gave me a clear conception of the philosophy back of these words: whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. It gave me a clear conception of law, of non-resistance, and it helped me interpret many passages of the Holy Scriptures bearing on this subject of the law, as I had never before interpreted them. The incident placed in my hands the passkey to a storage house of knowledge that is illuminating and helpful in all that I do. And later in life, when enemies sought to destroy me, it gave me a powerful weapon of defense that has never failed me. Lack of self-control is the average salesman's most damaging weakness. The prospective buyer says something that the salesman do not wish to hear, and if he has not this quality of self-control, he will strike back with a counter remark that is fatal to his sale. In one of the large department stores of Chicago, I witnessed an incident that illustrated the importance of self-control. A long line of women were in the front of the complaint desk, telling their troubles and the store's faults to the young woman in charge. Some of the women were angry and unreasonable, and some of them made very ugly remarks. Let me get some water, y'all. I should have set it over here. Give me 1 second. The young woman at the desk received the disgruntled women without the slightest sign of resentment at the remarks. With a smile on her face, she directed these women to the proper departments with such charming grace and poise that I marveled at her self-control. Standing just back of her was another young woman who was making notions on slips of papers and passing them in front of her as the women in the line unburdened their troubles. These slips of paper contained the gist of what the women in line were saying, minus the vitriolic coloring and the anger. The smiling young woman at the desk who was hearing the complaints was stone deaf. Her assistant supplied her with all the necessary facts, those slips of paper. I was so impressed with the plan that I sought the store manager of the store and interviewed him. He informed me that he selected a deaf woman for one of the most trying and important positions in the store for the reason that he had not been able to find another person with sufficient self-control to fill the place. As I stood and watched that angry line of women, I observed what pleasant effect the smile of the young woman at the desk had upon them. They came before her growling like wolves and went away as meek and quiet as sheep. In fact, some of them had sheepish looks on their face as they left, because the young woman's self-control had them ashamed of themselves. Ever since I witnessed that scene, I have thought of the poise and self-control of that young woman at the desk every time I felt myself becoming irate at remarks which I did not like. And often I have thought that everybody should have a set of mental earmuffs which they could slip over their ears at any time. Personally, I have developed the habit of closing my ears against much of the idle chatter, such as I used to make it my business to resent. Life is too short and there's too much constructive work to be done to justify us in striking back at everyone who says that which we do not wish to hear. In the practice of law, I have observed a very clever trick that trial lawyers use when they wish to get a statement of fact from a belligerent witness who answers questions with the proverbial "I don't remember" or "I don't know." When everything else fails, they manage to make such a witness angry and in a state of mind they cause him to lose self-control and make statements that he would not have made had he kept a cool head. And I've seen that on TV too, y'all. And actually in person too. Most of us go through life with our weather eye. What time is it? Cast skyward in quest of trouble. We usually find that for which we are looking. In my travels, I have been a student of men whom I've heard in Pullman car conversations. And I have observed that practically 9 out of every 10 have so little self-control that they will invite themselves into discussion of almost any subject that may be brought up. But a few men are contented to sit in a smoking compartment and listen to a conversation without joining in and airing their views. Once I was traveling from Albany to New York City. On the way down, the car club started a conversation about the late Richard Croker, who was then the chief of Tammany Hall. The discussion became loud and bitter. Everyone became angry except one old gentleman who was agitating the argument and taking a lively interest in it. He remained calm and seemed to enjoy all the mean things the other said about the tiger of Tammany Hall. That's an interesting name. Of course, I suppose that he was an enemy of the Tammany chef, but he wasn't. He was Richard Croker himself. Oh, wow. Oh, goodness. This is one of the clever tricks through which he found out what people thought of him and what his enemies' plans were. Whatever else Richard Croker might have been, he was a man of self-control. Perhaps that is one of the reasons why he remained undisputed boss of Tammany Hall as long as he did. Men who control themselves usually boss the job no matter what it may be. Please read that again, the last sentence of the preceding paragraph, for it carries a subtle suggestion that might be of profit to you. This is a commonplace incident, but it is in just such incidents that the great truths of life are hidden because the settings are ordinary and commonplace. Not long ago, I accompanied my wife on a bargain hunting bee. Our attention was attracted by a crowd of women who were elbowing each other out of the way in front of the petticoat counter at which bargains were being offered. One lady who looked to be about 45 years of age crawled on her hands and knees through the crowd and bobbed up in front of a customer who had engaged the attention of the saleswoman ahead of her. In a loud, high-pitched tone of voice, she demanded attention. The saleswoman was a diplomat who understood human nature. She also possessed self-control, for she smiled sweetly at her intruder and says, "Yes, miss, I'll be with you in a moment." The intruder calmed herself. I did not know whether it was the "yes, miss" or the sweet tone in which it was said that modified her attitude, but it was one or the other. Perhaps it was both. I do know, however, that the saleswoman was rewarded for her self-control by the sale of 3 petticoats, and the happy miss went away feeling much younger for the remark. Roast turkey is a popular dish, but overheating it cost a friend of mine who was in the printing press business a $50,000 order. It happened the day after Thanksgiving when he called his office for the purpose of introducing himself to a prominent Russian who had come to the United States to publish a book. The Russian spoke broken English, and it was therefore hard for him to make himself easily understood. During the interview, he asked my printer friend a question which was mistaken as a reflection upon his ability as a printer. In an unguarded moment, he countered with this remark: "The trouble with you Bolsheviks is that you look with suspicion on the remainder of the world just because of your own short-sightedness." My Bolshevik friend nudged me on the elbow and whispered, "The gentleman seems to be sick. We shall call again when he is feeling better." But he never called again. He placed his order with another printer, and I learned afterwards that the profit on the order was more than $10,000. $10,000 seems a high price to pay for a plate of turkey, but that is the price that it cost my printer friend, for he offered me an apology for his conduct on the grounds that the turkey had given him indigestion, and therefore he had lost his self-control. One of the largest chain stores in the world has adopted a unique though effective method of employing salespeople who have developed the essential quality of self-control, which all successful salespeople must possess. This concern has in its employ a very clever woman who visits department stores and other places where salespeople are employed and selects certain ones whom she believes to possess tact and self-control. But to be sure of her judgment, she approaches these salespeople and has them show her their wares. She asks all sorts of questions that are designed to try their patience. If they stand the test, they are offered better positions. If they fail the test, they have merely allowed a good opportunity to pass by without knowing it. No doubt all people who refuse or neglect to exercise self-control are literally turning opportunity after opportunity away without knowing it. One day I was standing at the glove counter on the large retail store talking to a young man who was employed there. He was telling me that he had been with the store 4 years, but on account of the short-sightedness of the store, His services had not been appreciated and he was looking for another position. In the midst of his conversation, a customer walked up to him and asked to see some hats. He paid no attention to the customer's inquiry until he had finished telling me his troubles, despite the fact that the customer was obviously becoming impatient. Finally, he turned to the customer and said, "This is in the hat department." When the customer inquired as to where he might find the department, the young man replied, "Ask the floor walker over there. He will direct you." For 4 years, this young man has been standing on the top of fine opportunity, but he did not know it. He could have made a friend of every person whom he served in that store, and these friends could have made him one of the most valuable men in that store, because they would have come back to trade with him. Snappy answers to inquiring customers do not bring them back. One rainy afternoon, an old lady walked into a Pittsburgh store department and wandered around in an aimless sort of way, very much in the manner that people who have no intention of buying often do. Most of the salespeople gave her the once-over and busied themselves by straining the stock on the shelves so as to avoid being troubled by her. One of the young men saw her, made it his business to inquire politely if he might serve her. She informed him that she was only waiting for it to stop raining, that she did not wish to make any purchases. The young man assured her that she was welcome by engaging her in conversation, made her feel that he had meant what he said. When she was ready to go, he accompanied her to the street and raised her umbrella for her. She asked for his card and went away. The incident had been forgotten by the young man. One day, he was called into the office by the head of the firm and shown a letter from whom a lady wanted a salesman to go to Scotland and take an order for furnishings for a mansion. The lady was Andrew Carnegie's mother. Oh, wow. She was also the same woman whom the young man had so courteously escorted to the street months previously. In the letter, Miss Carnegie specified that this young man was the one whom she desired to be sent to take her order. That order amounted to an enormous sum, and the incident brought the young man an opportunity for advancement that he might not have ever accepted for his courtesy to an old lady who did not look like a ready sale. And y'all, I'm going to stop there, as I know I got to get myself to work this morning, but I want to say this self-control chapter has been at least to me, very good so far. I know how important self-control is in life, and that's what this chapter is talking about as well. So I hope y'all are listening. I hope y'all are getting some nuggets from this. Again, make sure that y'all, of course, subscribe to the podcast, The Social Worker Coach. And then, of course, if you want to see me on the video, beautiful, and reading this, make sure that y'all go over to YouTube and, of course, subscribe to my channel, Tonetta Clay, which is my name. And, of course, all that information will be in the description of both of these, the video on YouTube and, of course, the podcast on The Social Worker Coach. Again, be sure to share this with your friends, family, and people who need to hear this, that you know that needs to gain some self-control. I guess I put it that way. Definitely share it with them. So peace out, y'all. This is Tonetta Clay, your social worker coach. Peace out, y'all. I'll see y'all in the next episode.